They say big changes either bring you closer or push you apart. When Grace got the promotion, I figured it would be the first. She was offered a senior position in Houston, better title, better salary, all the bells and whistles. No hesitation from me. I was all in. I told her we'd make it work, that I'd support her however she needed. That's what you do when you're building a life with someone, right? You show up. You adapt. You believe. We left Denver behind in late August. I gave up my little office at the architecture firm I'd worked at for 5 years, transitioned my clients to remote work, and packed our lives into a moving truck. Grace was ecstatic. She said this would be our new beginning. New city, new energy. We even joked that it might be the universe forcing us to grow up. Houston greeted us with heat that could punch through your skin and settle in your bones. But I didn't mind. I kept reminding myself this was progress. For Grace. For us. 3 weeks after we moved in, her company hosted a welcome party at a rooftop bar downtown. It was the kind of place with artisanal cocktails and sleek furniture that no one actually sat on. She wore this navy blue dress I hadn't seen before. Her hair curled a little at the ends, something she usually reserved for dates or formal events. I noticed but didn't say anything. I figured she just wanted to look sharp in front of her new colleagues. I remember feeling proud of her that night. Watching her float through conversations, laughing at the right moments, tossing compliments like confetti, it was like seeing someone step into the skin they were meant to wear. Grace had always been driven, but now she had power. And everyone around her could feel it. I tried to blend in. I shook hands, smiled at jokes I didn't get, drank a couple of whiskeys slower than usual. Most people assumed I worked in the same industry and I didn't correct them. I just wanted to support her, even if it meant nodding through tech talk and pretending I cared about quarterly KPIs. It happened during a conversation near the bar, just when I thought I was finding my footing. I was talking to a guy named Kevin, one of her team leads. He seemed harmless enough, smart, a little too charming, but nice. We started chatting about barbecue joints in the area. I mentioned I hadn't found a great brisket spot yet and that Grace and I were still settling in. That's when he said it. "You're Grace's ex, right?" Just like that. Like he was confirming something everyone already knew. It took me a second to process. I even chuckled, thinking maybe I misheard him. Her what? Kevin blinked, clearly realizing his mistake, or maybe realizing he wasn't supposed to say it aloud. I thought you were, like, previously together. My bad. Must have misunderstood something she said. Just a joke, you know? I forced a laugh, but I could feel my smile faltering. No, not her ex. Her current. Oh, he said quickly, awkwardly sipping his drink. Well, cool. Yeah. You guys seem great together. Then he excused himself and slipped into the crowd. I stood there for a minute, drink in hand, trying to make sense of it. It didn't feel like a joke. It didn't feel accidental either. Kevin hadn't said it like someone guessing, he said it like someone who'd been told. By her. Grace returned a few minutes later, cheeks flushed from the heat or maybe the wine, and leaned in to kiss my cheek. I smiled, but something felt off now. Different. The air between us wasn't quite the same. I didn't say anything right then. I didn't want to ruin her night over something that might have been nothing. But I stored it away. Later, back at the apartment, I brought it up. We were sitting on the couch, her shoes off, her hair pinned messily atop her head. I told her what Kevin had said, keeping my voice light, testing the waters. She laughed it off. Oh God, yeah. I probably said something dumb at work. You know how I get when I'm stressed, I joke about stupid stuff. Maybe I said my ex-boyfriend back in Denver or something. I don't even remember. People here take everything so literally. She waved her hand, sipping from her wine glass like we were done with the topic. But I wasn't. You said I was your ex? It was a joke, Ty. Like sarcasm. You know how I talk. Still, I said, trying to keep my tone neutral, that's kind of a weird joke to make, don't you think? She gave me a look, half amusement, half impatience. I don't know, babe. I've been under a lot of pressure. First week, new team, everyone's watching me. Maybe I just said something offhand. Kevin needs to lighten up. I nodded slowly and dropped it. But I didn't feel reassured. What unsettled me wasn't just the comment, it was how quickly she brushed it off, how practiced the dismissal felt. Like she'd already thought through how she'd answer if it ever came up. And maybe it was the wine, or the Texas heat, or the exhaustion of pretending all evening. But I couldn't stop turning the conversation over in my head long after she went to bed. The next morning, I got up early and stared at myself in the bathroom mirror. For the first time in a long time, I didn't recognize the person looking back. I'd always considered myself grounded, rational. But now I was spiraling over a single sentence from a stranger. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't a slip of the tongue. I started seeing things differently after that. The way Grace turned her phone face down every time we sat together. The quick way she swiped notifications away like they were gnats. The number of nights she started working late, saying she had to stay and set the tone for her team. I reminded myself to be patient. Relationships go through phases, right? We just moved. We were adjusting. She was stressed. But no matter how many times I tried to talk myself down, something stayed lodged in my chest. A quiet, unshakable doubt. And that night at the rooftop bar, that was the first crack. A hairline fracture in the foundation I thought was solid. And once it was there, I couldn't stop noticing how much the rest of it had started to shift. After that night, something shifted. I told myself I was being paranoid, overly sensitive, maybe even insecure. But I didn't feel paranoid, I felt observant. Aware in a way I hadn't been before. And once you start noticing things, it's hard to stop. That next week, Grace got busier. She started working late almost every night. At first, I chalked it up to the promotion. New responsibilities, new team, new pressure. She said she was leading a project with an impossible deadline and couldn't afford to mess it up. I didn't question her. I wanted to be supportive. I made dinner, kept the apartment clean, tried not to get in the way. But the distance between us kept growing, like something invisible was pressing against the walls of our relationship. She began taking weekend trips to regional trainings. At first, I didn't think much of it. These retreats or team-building weekends seemed like part of the job. But when I asked where she was going exactly or who she'd be with, she gave me vague answers, just the Gulf or somewhere near Austin. Her tone always came with a soft smile, like I was overthinking, like the details didn't matter. But they did matter, because one Saturday afternoon, while she was supposedly at a leadership seminar, I opened Instagram and saw a story she'd posted. It was just a view, sunlight streaming over a hotel balcony, a wine glass in the corner of the frame, but something felt off. The caption read, "Recharging sun chart increasing," and it bugged me. Not because of what was in the frame, but what wasn't. She never showed who she was with. No group photos, no colleagues, just solo images in curated lighting. It felt strategic. I didn't say anything that weekend. I didn't want to come off controlling. But the seed of doubt had grown roots. Then there was her phone. It used to sit face up on the counter, chiming now and then with harmless notifications. Now it was always face down and the screen locked with Face ID. She started taking it into the bathroom with her, even for a 2-minute shower. She'd laugh off any questions. "It's 2025, she said once, teasing. "You act like I'm hiding nuclear codes." But I wasn't laughing. I was remembering all the times she used to scroll through photos with me in bed, letting me pick which ones to post or which filters to use. Now the phone was an extension of her hand. Private, off limits. I didn't snoop. Not then. I still wanted to believe she was just overwhelmed, that the job had taken over more of her than either of us expected. And yet, the distance wasn't just physical. It was emotional. Conversations started feeling transactional. "Can you grab almond milk?" Replaced, "How was your day?" She answered questions with single words. She got annoyed when I asked about her schedule or tried to plan something for us. She started canceling things last minute, dinner dates, movie nights, even our weekend walks. Always with the same excuse, "Work's crazy right now." One morning, I brought up our anniversary. 5 years together. I'd made a reservation at the place where we had our first real date back in Denver. She looked up from her laptop and blinked. "Wait, what day is that again?" I smiled, thinking she was joking. "This Friday." She sighed and rubbed her temples. "Ugh, I've got the quarterly briefing that night. Can't miss it. Rain check. For our anniversary." She didn't even apologize. She just asked if I could reschedule the reservation. That night, while I sat on the balcony alone, a notification lit up my phone. She had posted a story, another one of those cryptic images. A glass of wine on a marble table. The caption said, "Earned this clinking glasses." I stared at it for a long time. No people, just vibes. but I noticed the reflection in the wine glass, barely visible, but there. A blurred silhouette in a collared shirt. Not a crowd. Not a seminar. Just two glasses. I didn't say a word. What was there to say? The thing is, I wasn't angry. I was detaching. Slowly. Silently. I started going through the motions without emotion. I smiled when she came home, asked about her day even though I knew the answers would be short and unrevealing. I stopped initiating conversations about the future. She didn't notice. One night, I tried again gently. We were sitting on the couch, half watching a show neither of us cared about. I asked her if she still felt like we were on the same team. She blinked at me. What kind of question is that? I don't know, I said. Just lately we feel like roommates. She didn't respond for a while. Then she said, "You're overthinking again." That phrase, "you're overthinking," became her default reply to everything. If I noticed she was distracted, "You're overthinking." If I asked why she left early and didn't come back until after midnight, "Don't overthink it." If I asked why she suddenly turned off her location sharing, something we used for safety since moving to a new city, she claimed the app had been buggy and she didn't have time to fix it. Eventually, I stopped asking. And that silence, that withdrawal, it wasn't a strategy. It was survival. Because deep down, I already knew. I didn't need confirmation. I didn't need proof. I could feel it. One night, I woke up around 2 a.m. and noticed she wasn't in bed. I found her in the living room, curled up with her laptop open, headphones on. She jumped when I walked in, quickly minimizing the screen. "Couldn't sleep," she said, voice tight. "Had to finish some projections." I nodded. Didn't ask questions. Didn't look over her shoulder. Just walked back to bed like everything was fine. But something in me shifted permanently that night. I realized that I'd been trying to salvage something she'd already let go of. That I was holding onto a version of us that only existed in my memory. Whatever she was going through, she didn't want me in it. I wasn't her confidant anymore. I was just present. Background noise. I started keeping a journal. Not because I wanted to document my heartbreak, but because I needed to make sense of what was happening. I didn't talk to friends about it. I didn't want to hear, "Dude, just confront her," or "You deserve better." I wasn't looking for validation. I was trying to figure out when exactly the woman I moved to Houston for stopped being mine. The journal helped. It gave me a space to admit things I didn't want to say out loud. That I felt like a placeholder. That every kind word from her now felt rehearsed. That I was afraid to check her eyes when she said she loved me because I wasn't sure I'd find anything there. I didn't hate her. That's the part that hurt most. I loved her still. Enough to hope I was wrong. Enough to give her space instead of ultimatums. But love without connection is like trying to start a fire with wet matches. No spark. Just the effort. Just the ache. I kept waiting for some sign she wanted to come back to the version of us that used to laugh in bed until midnight, plan trips on impulse, dream together. But that version had disappeared. Not in a dramatic flash. Not in a fight or betrayal. It was a slow unraveling. And now I was the only one holding the thread. The day it happened didn't start any differently. That's the part that gets me now, how normal it all felt. A Tuesday morning. The sky was overcast. Grace had already left before I even rolled out of bed. She left a sticky note on the fridge that said, "Don't forget to water the jade plant. Love you." The kind of note she'd leave out of habit, not affection. I worked from home most of the day. My job had become a kind of comfortable background noise, a mix of Zoom meetings and client revisions I could do half awake. But sometime around 2 p.m. I got an email that changed everything. A major client canceled last minute. The meeting I'd built my whole day around was off the calendar, and just like that, my afternoon opened up. I remember standing in the kitchen, staring at my calendar, and thinking maybe I'll surprise her. Pick up dinner. Make something nice. It had been a while since we had a real dinner together that wasn't microwaved or eaten on opposite ends of the couch. Maybe I just wanted to feel like I still had some role in her life. Like I could remind her who we were. I even stopped by her favorite Thai place on the way home. I got her usual order, drunken noodles, extra spicy, no mushrooms. She once joked that no one got her order right except me. That memory stung a little now, but I clung to it anyway. When I pulled into our driveway, I noticed something odd. Grace's car was parked slightly off-center, like she'd rushed inside. And that might have meant nothing. But combined with everything else lately, it made my gut twist just a little tighter. Still, I told myself not to assume. Maybe she came home early. Maybe she wasn't feeling well. Maybe God, I don't know, maybe she was finally planning a surprise for me for once. The front door was locked, like always. I walked in quietly, groceries in hand. The house was silent. Too silent. No TV, no music. Just the faint hum of the refrigerator and the tick of the hallway clock. I set the food down on the counter and called out, "Grace." No answer. I walked further in. Then I heard it. Voices. Not loud, but close, muffled through the upstairs floor. I froze. I can still remember that moment as vividly as if it's been playing on loop in my head ever since. The exact pitch of the voice. The way the air changed. My heart wasn't pounding, it was something colder. Slower. Like the world had narrowed into a single, echoing corridor. I didn't want to believe it. I stood at the bottom of the stairs waiting for some kind of rational explanation to announce itself. Maybe a colleague? A Zoom call? But I knew better. My body knew before my mind accepted it. I moved quietly, each step heavier than the last. I stopped halfway up the stairs, listening. Laughter. Low. An asterisk mate. Then something else. A pause. A gasp. And then movement. Sheets, maybe? Or clothes. I don't know. I didn't want to know. I should have turned around. Maybe if I had, I could have preserved the denial a little longer. But I didn't. I kept climbing. When I reached the top, the bedroom door was slightly ajar. Not wide open, not locked. Just careless. I stepped closer and looked through the crack. There she was. Grace. My Grace. In bed with someone else. It wasn't suggestive. It wasn't ambiguous. It was clear. Undeniable. The an asterisk Macy. The expressions. The way she touched him softly, familiarly. Like she'd done it 100 times before. And the worst part? She looked happy. That image will haunt me for the rest of my life. Not because of what they were doing, but because of what it revealed. She hadn't just disconnected from me. She connected to someone else. Fully. Willingly. Maybe even lovingly. I didn't barge in. I didn't yell. I didn't demand explanations or throw punches. I just stood there, staring into a reality I couldn't unsee. Then I turned around and walked down the stairs as quietly as I came. My heart didn't race. It didn't shatter. It sank. Like a stone dropped into deep water. Quiet. Heavy. I walked out the front door, got into my car, and drove. I don't even remember where I went at first. I just drove in circles around the neighborhood. I pulled into a gas station at some point. Sat there in the parking lot for nearly an hour, staring at the dashboard. The food was still in the passenger seat. It had gone cold. Eventually, I drove to a park a few miles out. One we used to visit back in those early Houston weeks before everything shifted. I parked, got out, and walked to a bench by the water. I sat there for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even feel angry. I just stopped. Like the inside of me went dark. Like my emotions got unplugged. I replayed everything in my head slowly. The locked phone. The skipped anniversary. The business trips. The way she'd started avoiding eye contact when she said, "I love you." It all made sense now. The pattern wasn't vague anymore, it was a map. And I'd been following the wrong trail the whole time. I didn't call anyone. Not a friend, not my brother, not even Grace. I didn't want comfort. I wanted clarity. And I had it now. When the sun started to set, I finally stood up and walked back to the car. I drove home calmly. I half expected her to be gone already, to have left some weak explanation on the counter like, "I'm sorry you saw that." But when I got back, everything looked exactly as it had when I left. Except for one thing. She was in the kitchen pouring herself a glass of water. Wearing pajamas like nothing had happened. I paused at the door. She turned, saw me, and smiled. "Hey, you're back early. Everything okay?" That moment, it was surreal. She had no idea I'd seen anything. She had no clue that the bottom had dropped out of our world just a few hours earlier. I nodded once. "Yeah. Client canceled. Just went for a drive." She leaned against the counter, sipping her water. "Sorry you wasted the trip." I said nothing. And just like that, we slipped back into our script. Or at least she did. That night, I didn't sleep in our bed. I went to the guest room without saying a word. No fight. No confrontation. Just silence. A silence louder than any scream. She didn't come after me. She didn't ask questions. Maybe she thought I was upset about work. Maybe she didn't care. Or maybe she knew and just didn't want to admit it yet. I stared at the ceiling for hours. It wasn't heartbreak. It was something colder. Like the soul of our relationship had finally gone quiet. And in that silence, I found something I hadn't felt in weeks. Clarity. The truth had arrived. And I didn't need her to say it out loud. I had seen it with my own eyes. And from that moment on, I was done pretending. The morning after, she acted like nothing happened. She made coffee, scrolled through her phone, mentioned something about a meeting she had later. I watched her from across the kitchen like I was observing a stranger pretending to be someone I once knew. She didn't ask why I'd slept in the guest room. She didn't comment on the untouched Thai food still sitting in the fridge. It was as if her world had gone untouched while mine had been split open. I didn't bring it up. I didn't ask who he was. I didn't say I saw her. And that silence? It wasn't passive. It was deliberate. It was my last thread of self-control. For the next few days, I moved like a ghost through the house. I got up early, showered, worked. I ate alone. I responded to her when necessary but never initiated. We became two people living parallel lives under the same roof, pretending we weren't spiraling in opposite directions. She barely noticed. Or maybe she noticed but didn't care. Sometimes I'd hear her on the phone in the other room, soft laughter, the way her voice shifted when she talked to certain people. She still said she was going to client dinners, still wore outfits too polished for simple business meetings, still came home too late with vague explanations and tired eyes. One night she came back after midnight. I was already in the guest room pretending to sleep. She opened the door slowly, peeked in like she was checking on a dog that might bite. "You okay?" she asked, voice soft. "Fine," I said, not looking up. "Long day," she murmured, then disappeared down the hall. She never followed up. She never crawled into bed beside me, wrapped her arms around me, or whispered the kind of lies I might have wanted to believe. And the more she didn't ask, the more I realized she knew. Not what I saw exactly, but that I knew. And that was enough. I started shrinking inside myself. I stopped answering calls from friends. I let texts pile up. Even work started slipping through my fingers. I'd sit in front of my laptop for hours, the screen glowing, emails unanswered. My productivity nosedived and I couldn't bring myself to care. What was the point of designing homes for other people when the one I lived in had become so hollow? I'd walk around the house sometimes, noticing things I hadn't before. A new toothbrush in her drawer. A hoodie draped over the arm of the couch that didn't belong to me. A cologne scent I'd never worn lingering faintly on the sheets. I never touched any of it. Never threw it out or moved it. I wasn't trying to erase anything anymore. I was documenting. The worst moments came at night. I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling fan, listening for her footsteps, for the sound of her brushing her teeth or watching a show in the other room. Sometimes I'd hear her laughing, soft, genuine, and it would slice through me sharper than any confession ever could. Because I knew it wasn't for me. And yet I still hadn't confronted her. Not because I was afraid of the truth, but because I already had it. And I needed time to figure out what to do with it. I didn't want a dramatic confrontation. I didn't want yelling or excuses. I didn't want to hear her say it didn't mean anything because that would only prove how little she thought I meant. So I waited. Not for her, but for the part of me that still wanted to fight for her, for us, for what we used to be, to finally die. That part of me held on longer than I thought it would. I'd catch myself remembering little things. The way she used to sing while folding laundry. The inside jokes that made us laugh until we cried. The way she used to squeeze my hand twice before crossing a street, our silent way of saying I love you. But those memories felt like postcards from a life I no longer lived. And slowly, I began letting go. I stopped checking the clock when she said she'd be home. I stopped checking her location even though part of me still wanted to. I stopped wondering who she was texting, who she was smiling at across a table somewhere, who she was becoming when she wasn't with me. The numbness set in like winter. Slow, quiet, complete. I lost my appetite, my energy, my desire to fix anything. I started waking up later and later, sleeping through alarms. I'd walk into the bathroom and avoid the mirror because looking at myself felt like staring at someone I didn't recognize anymore. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even heartbroken. I was just done. One afternoon, I found myself sitting on the floor of the guest room surrounded by boxes we never unpacked after the move. I opened one randomly and found old photos, us in Denver, on hikes, at coffee shops, in bed with the dog we used to foster. We looked happy. Not posed happy but real. Her head on my shoulder. My hand on her thigh. The kind of closeness that felt effortless back then. I stared at one photo for a long time, us on a camping trip, curled up in sleeping bags under a mess of stars. She looked at me like I was the only person in the world. And I felt nothing. Not nostalgia. Not regret. Nothing. That scared me more than anything else. Because even pain means you still care. But I didn't feel pain anymore. I felt hollow. That night, I didn't sleep in the guest room. I slept on the couch. Another silent migration further away from her, from us, from the life I had built thinking it was real. When she noticed, she didn't ask why. She just left a folded blanket on the cushion like that was some kind of gesture of care. I unfolded it and lay beneath it like a man surrendering. I started making lists in my head. What to take, what to leave, what I'd need to transfer. The steps of disappearing. Not because I had a plan yet, but because I needed something to focus on. Grace continued living her double life like nothing was wrong. She started sleeping in later. Her mood improved. She started humming again in the mornings, applying makeup while sipping coffee, scrolling her phone with a smile. She wore the perfume I bought her last Christmas like it meant something. But she never wore it for me anymore. One morning she kissed my cheek out of nowhere. I flinched and she pretended not to notice. "How's your project going?" she asked, too casually. "Fine," I said. "Lots of revisions." "Cool. You've been so quiet lately." I nodded. "Just tired." She smiled, distant, distracted, and walked out the door, keys jangling. She didn't look back. And that was it. That was the last attempt. The final illusion of normalcy. When the door closed behind her, I sat on the couch and let the silence press down on me. It didn't crush me. It held me. Strangely comforting. Strangely final. This wasn't marriage anymore. It was cohabitation. It was avoidance. It was two people playing characters they no longer believed in. And me? I was done pretending to be okay. Done waiting for her to admit the truth. Done hoping for a version of her that no longer existed. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't say anything. I just folded the blanket, placed it neatly on the couch, and started planning how to disappear without making a sound. There's a certain kind of peace that comes after the collapse. Not a good kind. Not healing or redemptive. But still, a kind of stillness. When the noise dies down, the lies lose their novelty and your heart stops trying to claw its way out of your chest. It's not numbness. It's clarity. Cold, mechanical clarity. That's when I started planning. Not revenge. Not some scorched earth fantasy where I expose her or make a scene. No. That would require passion, energy, both of which I no longer had for her. What I wanted was distance. Privacy. Control. A way out that didn't involve another shouting match or hollow apology. So I started small. I opened a new bank account. Nothing dramatic, just a checking and a savings at a credit union on the other side of town. I told myself it was for emergencies, but deep down I knew it was for departure. I started routing my freelance payments there, changing account info on my invoices one by one. She didn't notice. She never asked about money. I'd always handled the bills, the budgeting, the taxes. She had no reason to ask questions now. Next, I began forwarding documents, bank statements, client contracts, health insurance info to a new email account I created under an alias. Just a generic Gmail with a forgettable name. It was simple. Clean. Untraceable unless you were looking, and Grace wasn't looking. I started backing up photos from my phone. Not of her, of my family, old vacations, my work portfolio. Anything that felt like mine. I moved them to a hard drive I kept buried in a box of old electronics in the back of the guest room closet. Every evening while she watched her shows or disappeared into her phone, I chipped away at the exit like a prisoner digging a tunnel with a spoon. Then came the apartment hunting. I told friends I was just looking around, curious about how real estate compared to Denver. A few sent me links, listings, contacts. I scrolled quietly through photos of empty living rooms and tiny balconies, imagining what it would feel like to wake up somewhere she had never touched. Somewhere her laughter had never bounced off the walls. Somewhere I could breathe without wondering who had been in my bed. Eventually, I found a place. A small, third-floor unit on the east side of the city. Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, hardwood floors, a view of nothing in particular. But it felt clean. It felt like a reset. I signed the lease under my full name and told the landlord I'd be moving in within the month. Meanwhile, Grace continued living her curated double life. Smiling, texting, posting vague, filtered snaps *TS of work lunches and happy hour cocktails. Always just out of frame, always missing a second glass, a second plate. Her captions were hollow quotes about balance, resilience, self-love. At night, she kissed me on the cheek like it meant something. I let her. She never noticed that I stopped keeping my phone plugged in on the nightstand. That I started taking long walks every evening with a notepad in my pocket. That the guest room, which had become my sanctuary, was slowly shedding its temporary feel. I bought new sheets, a new toothbrush. I started separating my laundry. Then I called a lawyer. Not because I wanted to sue or fight or take everything. I just wanted to know the process, what it looked like, what I'd need. I sat in a beige office across from a woman named Lydia, who had the calm, exhausted expression of someone who'd seen every type of betrayal 10 times over. I told her the basics. She nodded, didn't flinch. "Do you have proof?" she asked. I paused. Then I told her I had footage. See, a few weeks earlier, I remembered that our smart doorbell camera had cloud storage. I logged in, searched the dates, found the clips. Sure enough, there he was. Same guy, same time frames, same rhythms. Walking up to the door when Grace said she was working late. Entering while I was on Zoom calls. Leaving just before I got home. I saved the videos. I also started taking **TS. Her posts, her messages, her sudden do not disturb mode when she was home, her phone lighting up with names I didn't recognize, D.M. Initials that seemed to only exist after 9 p.m. I showed some of the evidence to Lydia. She glanced through it like it was a grocery list. This will help, she said, especially if you want to expedite it. I didn't want to hurt Grace legally. I just wanted out. With my sanity. With my dignity. With no more illusions. I scheduled the papers to be drafted. Gave Lydia the timeline. Told her I'd handle the delivery myself. The days that followed were quiet. There's no better word. Grace moved through the house like someone living in a show home. Every movement calculated, staged. She smiled too much. Complimented me randomly, out of sync. Told me I seemed more relaxed lately. She had no idea what she was looking at. I was finished. The day before I planned to leave, I walked through the house alone. Room by room. I didn't cry. I didn't touch our things. I just observed. The framed photo of us at Red Rocks. The travel map on the wall with pins marking every place we said we'd go. But never did. The mugs we bought at the farmer's market. The ones she used when he came over, probably without thinking. I took nothing of hers. No mementos. No letters. I didn't want souvenirs from a life I was no longer part of. Then I left her a note. Short. Simple. Grace, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. No need to call. No need to explain. This isn't about punishment. It's about peace. I saw everything. I know everything. And now I choose something else. T. I folded it and left it on the kitchen counter. Next to it, the envelope, divorce papers pre-filled, ready for her signature. All she had to do was sign and mail them back to Lydia. I walked out the front door, looked back once, and closed it softly behind me. That night, I slept in my new apartment. No footsteps overhead. No voice in the next room. Just silence. But this silence, it wasn't heavy. It wasn't empty. It was mine. And for the first time in months, I could finally breathe.